Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Daniel Hood Roofing. Spring in East Tennessee means stormy weather. Don't fall victim to a bad break from Mother Nature. If your neighborhood gets hit with high winds, hail, heavy rain, get a free roof inspection from Daniel Hood Roofing. They want to put a new roof on your house, there's no question, but they also want your insurance company to pay for it. So if you've got a storm, call DanielHoodRoofing.com. Well, call Daniel Hood Roofing. Dial up DanielHoodRoofing.com, because if you just dial DanielHoodRoofing.com, nobody's going to answer. It's a computer. Then again, in the world of AI, maybe it will. All right, let's take a look at today's poll question. I want to get you involved in this. Okay, some of you have already been online to play along. The poll question today, would you like your NFL team to draft Joe Milton? Whoa. The answers are, with that arm, heck yes. Or, sure, but as a project. Or, nope, I've seen enough. And it looks like right now, sure, but as a project is leading. Only 5% of you say, heck yeah, with that arm, let's bring him into our team. Get your smartphone out, click at that QR code, and vote for us. That's good, Chuck. Tell us what your thoughts are. We don't let him vote. Tell us what your thoughts are on this. You can also go to sportsource.tv/polls, or just go to sportsource.tv. You'll see polls at the top. Click the polls. It'll take you right there, and you can click on it. But let us know, because we like to keep track of that. You see the little lines moving already. So tell us what you think. Would you want Joe Milton, a former Vol, on your NFL team? All right. This week, Adam Sparks, the Knoxville News Sentinel, who I really like his stuff, by the way. Just that's kiss of death to say I like somebody, but he does a great job. He spoke to Phillip Fulmer this week at his golf tournament for the Boys and Girls Club, and they raised $3 million. So kudos to Coach Fulmer and his players who came in for that. He was asked about the playoffs. Let's go ahead and put up the graphic here. And Fulmer said, I wish so badly now that it had been around. As a coach, I wasn't sure if I was for the playoff, but now I really wish we had it, because we had a better run during that time than almost anybody. In 2001, we would have probably won it, to be honest, if we had a playoff. All right, well, let's take a look at those years and what they did. Now, according to the Sentinel, they would have made the playoffs 8 times in the 12-team format that's coming up. This doesn't take into account what could be a 14 playoff or 14 team lineup that's coming in a couple years. 93, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99. That's a heck of a stretch right there. And then 01 and 03 for Phillip Fulmer would have been his playoff teams. You saw what their record was, their final record, and you saw what happened in the bowl games. My question for you guys is, you can look at this 2 ways. One, if they'd been in those playoffs all those times, they'd won more than one national title. The other way to look at it is, if they'd have been a playoff, they might not have won their one national title. Would they have won more? Would they have won their one? What's your thoughts? And who was getting this one first? I'll go to Josh.
I do think the line would be 1.5. I think they at least get one. I'd feel comfortable in that. 98, the way that team was built,
something magical
I think
too.
They still get it done.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the other year is. I'm going to most confidently say they get it. 95 is interesting. That team was so good at the end of the season, and
beat Ohio State. And
an Ohio State team with a ton of talent, NFL talent as well. So that would probably be where I lean. But I kind of just play the average, and I say if they're going to be in it pretty much every year in those years that you just laid out on the screen, I'd probably give them another one. So they'd run up to some tough matchups like Nebraska, but maybe somebody that they'd play in a championship game gets knocked off before they get there. So I would give them a second.
I would give him a second one also. And the 95 team is one I would point to the most.
Yeah.
John Chavis, who was the defensive coordinator at Tennessee, said that's the best defense he had, better than 98, which I thought was pretty interesting. 95, they lost to Florida. Nebraska, I think, won the national championship that year. Didn't they blow out Florida?
Crush Florida.
That would have been the tougher game along the way. But just law of averages, if you get there 8 times, possibly, but I thought the 95 team, more than 01. I thought Miami in 01.
Yeah,
that team had like, what is it?
38 NFL draft picks on it.
Yeah, that's pretty good right there. So I would have said one more, and I would have pointed to 95 as the most likely.
I would have kept it right where it is, personally. I'll stay and I lived in Ohio at the time of 98. I could do a whole segment on how those people freaked out about how they would have beaten Tennessee. Beat Michigan State at home and you'll get a shot. But here's the thing. Phillip Fulmer didn't always win the big game. I mean, that's why they call him a big game. But he had a history. Spurrier usually got him when they had pretty even teams, but Spurrier usually got him. That said, there's one guy that won big games less than Phillip Fulmer, and that's John Cooper. So if the idea was you wouldn't have played Florida State, you'd have played Ohio State. they'd have beaten Ohio State the same way they did in '95. So I think they would have kept 98. I don't know if they would have added another, though. But what do you think?
I would say 2 as well. So I think they would have added another. There's plenty of NFL talent on those Tennessee teams as well. And I also think you'd have to see what the path is there. It wouldn't absolutely go all chalk, but you want to see what some of the pathways. I haven't seen that. But I do think just from numbers like the guys mentioned and just from the talent they had and finishing off strong in their final game, I think they would have cashed in one more.
Super fan? They won 8 more. Didn't even need the playoff for the 8.
Yeah, as the old timer on this panel,
I
I
was
believe,
talking about that's an old time theory.
I
I
believe you win championships with defense, and I like what Jimmy said. And Josh, if you can see this, what does that say right there?
It says 95.
It says 95, and that
That's
was
how
the
much you
year.
bet on it.
That was the year I already had down because I
That's
believe
how
that
old he
team.
is.
But I really do. I think I think out of 8 times,
Yeah.
I think the dominoes or everything's going to fall just right to get one at least.
Okay, I just look at it and think, how many times did you have a team that was equal to or better than Florida? And you won the SEC twice in that decade. So you're telling me, well, couldn't win the SEC, but they're going to go right out and beat everybody else in America.
They wouldn't have to deal with Florida.
Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah,
They didn't
that's
play
it.
them.
That's
And,
it.
and
So
you're
you got-
not. This isn't in September. It's
Here-
later in the year.
Well, here's another question I've got just for Jimmy because we're going to make this fast. But I thought this was interesting. I wanted to go back a little further. If you go back to with the 12-team format into the majors years, he would have made the playoffs in 85, 89, 90, 91. If he's in the playoffs in 89, 90, 91 and has a 3-loss season by 7 points in 92, does he get fired and does Fulmer get the job? Now, there was a lot of personal stuff behind the scenes that went into that. But if you look at it that way, and if we're going to do this hypothetical, Majors would have been in 3 straight playoffs. I don't know that he gets fired in 92.
I think that's a really good point. You would think probably not, although he was sharing or winning SEC championships. However, getting into the playoffs and maybe making a run, I think that'd have been a whole lot harder to cut bait with John Majors. Yeah.
Interesting. Now, there was a lot of personal stuff behind the scenes. There was.
Yeah, and health issues.
And knives. That went into backs. When we come back, which led to health issues, when we come back, how does the NFL view some former Vols? We'll talk about this week's NFL draft next, who goes where, and when. Come on back.